At time 2:03, Chairperson receives general motion number 2, which reads that the warmest welcome to be given to Mr. Harry Chen, the MCPP incoming global talent of AIESEC Hong Kong of session 12-13, and Mr. Cao Yang, the local committee president of AIESEC and CityU in session 12-13. May I have the proposal from the floor? Ms. Naomi Wong, seconder. Mr. Gary Christopher, will propose to speak for the motion. Proposer.
Hello Carl and hello Harry. So thank you for coming to Angie and Irene's AGM. So please use your experience to raise questions and also to facilitate here for Angie's growth and later Irene's growth throughout their election journey. Thank you.
Will seconder speak for the motion? Seconder.
Hi Harry and Carl, so thank you so much for coming to today's AGM. So we hope that you guys can challenge the candidates to see whether her plan actually can bring this entity forward.
Any general comment? Mr. Cao Yang.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, most of you should not know me. My name is Cao Yang. I'm one of the co-founder, and also Harry, and also some others, for the first generation of CityU, AIESEC in CityU. And today, we're very happy to see that now, finally, we got two candidates on the stage. And I'm very honorable to come back again. And one thing I need to emphasize is that I'm really proud of you guys because I think the journey of the leadership is not when you get elected. It's at the moment that you determine and decide to apply and determine to lead the organization. And it doesn't end after your term. And even up to now, I'm still learning. I also make mistakes. But that will be interesting. And I also looking forward to today's, the later of today, that you can convince the others and show how both of you can lead the organization. There may not be some right or wrongs, but suitable or not, or maybe what kind of leadership they want. So keep it up, and also I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Any more general comment? Wait. Okay, so we will resume to the question and answer session. And can I have the first question holder from the floor? Mr. Chris Chow.
Thank you, Chairperson. There are two statements. One statement is many hands make light work, and another statement is too many cooks spoil the broth. So please state that which one you agree and justify.
Point of clarification from Ms. Angie Fong.
Excuse me, can you repeat again?
The first statement is many hands make light work, and the second statement is too many cooks spoil the broth.
Ms. Angie Fong.
So I think it will be the first one. And the reason is that I think if you want to go far and you want to go big, it's impossible for you to do it by yourself. You need to get people around you to do it together with you. And yeah, that's it.
Follow-up question from Mr. Chris Chow. Mr. Chris Chow.
Thank you, Chairperson. Please justify your answer by past experience and answer.
Point of clarification from Ms. Angie Fong.
Excuse me, what do you mean by other entities?
Other LCs.
Okay.
Time's up, Ms. Angie Fong.
I'll give an example of City University's branding event. They hold a branding event lately, and they do it with the first approach, which is ask for help from as many people as possible. They even asked me for input on their branding event, so I think it's a good way to make their event better, and that's an example of I think them fulfill the first sentence criteria.
Next question from the floor. Ms. Kathy Kwan.
Thank you, Chairperson. What is the pain in your manifesto that you are trying to tackle for AIESEC and CityU?
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So the pain is actually very obvious. It's about people. It's always about people. And it's not only on whether people are committed or not. It's also about whether they can feel or they can understand what AIESEC is doing and contribute towards that direction. And I think it's better to do it with the IXP and also the TM. Like there's too much that we can do in these two areas to tackle this pain. And that's why these are the main focus of my manifesto too.
Follow-up question, Ms. Kathy Kwan.
Thank you, Chairperson. So what were the things you have in mind when you were drafting your manifesto? What it means by that is that how did you draft your manifesto from the very beginning? Like what were in your mind?
Ms. Angie Fong.
It starts from, thank you, Chairperson. So it starts from actually some feel of the very person, like related to me experience in my AIESEC experience. So it's like, I have a lot of things that I want to do as a VP, but I face a lot of obstacles because of the pain that the FC is having. So I really know how serious this problem can be, and I start to write my manifesto based on that pain.
New question from the floor. Ms. Derry Saloto.
Thank you, Chairperson. So my question is, which one do you think is more important, quality or quantity?
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm always a person who is talking about quality. Like from the previous sessions, like the previous Q&A session, maybe you guys can tell, I'm a person that really values standard. And that's another thing that proves that I value quality a lot. And like giving one example is that sometimes I might have I have a certain achievement in my performance, like even my EB or my teammates kind of recognize that, but I still think that it's not enough, and I really want to achieve higher than that, and that's my standard of having quality.
Follow-up question, Ms. Derry Saloto.
Thank you, Chairperson. Okay. So I believe that when asked, most people will agree that quality is more important than quantity. But my question is, why is it that every year leaders in AIESEC put emphasis on numbers, for example, the LC criteria, instead of the quality in these numbers? Thank you.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think it's really a lot about execution. Like maybe at the beginning, people of course will realize that quality is very important. But when it comes to execution, quality is actually very difficult to get, and quantity is actually much more easier in terms of AIESEC. Like you can send one, you can use all kind of means to get someone going on exchange. But it's much more difficult to ensure that they can develop leadership through the exchanges. And that's the first part of why I think people just maybe emphasize more on quantity when they get on term. And the second part is actually like there are some kind of competition between LCs that make people value quantity when they really want to win.
Next question from the floor. Ms. Naomi Wong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So from your manifesto, you have put belief into EP returnees, that they have experienced exchange and return with more willing, return with to come back to have a more complete leadership journey. But then, as you may see that sometimes EPs may have bad experiences, and no matter how much you convince them, they would not turn out to be ISPs. So in this case, if you're looking for ISPs in your term, what are your action steps for these coming months, and as well as you're officially on turn afterwards? Thank you.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So the first thing I need to do is to communicate with my OGV VP, which is what I have already done. Because I realized that we don't really have a lot of time left for this term, and how this term's exchange quality achieved will actually affect how next session's IXP conversion be. So what I talked to her yesterday about how can we do better IXP conversion, and there's two main points that I want to let her know. And the first one is how EPM can tell the EPs how great their membership experience is, because it's the most direct way for the EPs to know how a membership experience is like, and if they want to become a member after the exchange. And they can start the consideration not only after the reintegration, but when they are having their pre-trip in Hong Kong. So
time's up. Follow-up question, Ms. Naomi Wong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So currently our members, most of them also applied for global volunteer or other exchange opportunities in AIESEC. So considering timeline-wise, if they want to become next year's ED, for example, how would you see this, and how would you solve it if there's any difficulties in timeline arrangement? Thank you.
Ms. Angie Fong.
thank you, Chairperson. So there is actually one of the advantage of timeline shift that will occur from next session. It means that we have more time to perform, and it also means that we have the time for the EBs to go on exchange if they don't have that experience. And I think it's possible for them to go on as soon as possible, and after they come back, they will have a more clear understanding on what exchange really means, and will start planning. It will actually benefit the whole term, starting from after the exchange until they come back. And also when they go on exchange, they can know that AIESEC is on their side. If they're OGXVPs, they can also form stronger IL relationships, and also to really get more first-hand information about how's the entity performing. And that's good for IL too.
Your question from the floor, Mr. Gary Christopher.
Thank you, Jefferson. So one very interesting part in your manifesto is the fact that you want to have IXDs only in the LC in 2023. So I have two questions for this one. So for the first one, in 2021, you want to have only senior members in back office. How can you actually convince them to stay just by becoming a member? Considering that even now, if you wanna progress, the number of candidates are not that many. And secondly, what is your contingency plan if there are not enough IXPs? Thank you.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, for the first question, how can I get enough senior members? I think the more important part is not just about the title, it's also about the learning that I can let them see if they stay for one more year. Sometimes maybe they have a lot of commitments outside of AIESEC, and then they don't really want to commit that much in AIESEC, but they really want to stay. And I think senior member is actually a quite suitable position for them to stay if it's the case, because it's not the only way for you to be in AIESEC if you progress. You can still stay in AIESEC to help AIESEC and also to act out the AIESEC failures out of AIESEC. And the second point is, what if I don't get enough IXPs? I think it's also possible for us to send the members that haven't been on an exchange to an exchange, like how some of you are doing.
One question. Mr. Gary Christopher.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, because you say that, okay, following up on the IXP question, so would you consider members who have been doing volunteering before, because they're essentially the same? It's just like for IXPs, they go for volunteering to AIESEC, but other people, they can go volunteering or internships using other platforms. So would you consider these kind of people? Yeah, as members?
Like overseas.
Yeah, overseas.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I think I will of course accept those kind of people, because like Irene is a very good example of how those kind of people who went on exchange, even not in AIESEC, can act out AIESEC values. Like she haven't been on an AIESEC exchange, but she's an international student from Indonesia, so she knows how important cultural understanding is. And I think that's the key point that I want people to go on exchange before they become a member. So that's also a yes for me.
New question from the floor. Mr. Kaoya.
Thank you, Chairperson. So Angie, I want to know from you, like, AIESEC is an organization. We want to develop people. We claim to be non-profit. And why should we talk about numbers, KPIs, conversion rates, all this kind of stuff?
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So actually for KPI, it's a very good direction. It doesn't only make the standard of how far we need to go, it's also a direction of where we want to go. For example, if I said 50 exchanges and 100 exchanges, what we do is very different. Maybe for 50 exchanges, we focus on how to develop every single EP. But for 100, maybe we'll focus more on the marketing, how we get enough EP, and how can we nurture them until they get approved. But like besides the standard and direction that KPI can give, it can also give the members a very practical experience of how the business world is really doing things, because they really have targets, and if the members are working towards the target, they can know how they can really reach the goal and they really get into the task force, and it is really a very valuable experience for the members.
Follow-up question, Mr. Kaoya.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I know nowadays you guys should be talking about selling the products, and in the individual products, and you can be an AIESEC, and don't talk about the whole AIESEC and blah 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 things. So I want to know about under this kind of trend or atmosphere, why do you want to really emphasize on IXP? What makes it so unique, and you really want to push it? What can it bring to the whole entity or maybe your members?
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I think it actually comes from like my background, I'm from back office, I'm from BM, I'm not an exchange office, I'm not the one who directly experienced how impactful exchange is as an EPM. So it might be difficult for me to understand what AIESEC is really doing. And I found that struggle throughout my member term. And I really think that it's a very crucial quality that a member should have to perform. Because even when I get through the EGM to become an LCPP, I don't really know what AIESEC is really doing. And sometimes it might affect my decisions on how to do things. For example, should I really focus on telling people what AIESEC is, or to really let them know how great AIESEC is, but it's not actually the case. So, like for example, in this kind of situations, how the members or how the VPs' understandings towards the impact of the essence of exchange is very important. Like it's not only on decision making, but also on how they tell the members, and also how to keep the essence of the entity.
Next question. Mr. Harry Chen.
Thank you, Chairperson. A very short question which follow up with Carl's question. So just now you mentioned one thing is what AIESEC do. So give me in 2 sentences, what will AIESEC do?
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So AIESEC develops people who help solve the world's problem.
Follow-up question. Mr. Harry Chen.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, question now, back in CityU. How do you want to do it? I'll split this into 2 very different questions. The first part, tell me, what do you want to see in 1 year, in 5 years' time, if you're managing it? And then tell me how, every single month, if there's only one thing that you can do every single month, starting from now, if you're elected, what do you do until you finish your term?
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So in first year, I want to have at least one exchange returnee in every sub-team, so as to let the members understand how cultural exchange really is and how important it is. Like they can share about their experience within the sub-team to let the members feels that it's closer to them. Because if we tell them stories, it won't be like as realistic as their teammates tell them. And also there's a point like if they are EPMs, then they can actually tell the EPs how the experience is, and it's much more credible than someone who haven't been on exchange to be their EPM. And in 5 years, so that's the reason why in 5 years I want to have IXPs only IXPs in the LC. And for the second part, how can I achieve these in a 12 or...
Time's up. Your question. Ms. Kathy Kwan.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I got a question also regarding to your measure of success mentioned here, but about only senior members and back office. But unlike Gary asking about how do you do it, I want to know why you have such thought that you want only senior member in the back office. Thank you.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So actually, if you are someone with 1 year of membership experience, not only that you will know more about the operation, but also you have higher possibilities on understanding what AIESEC is really doing. Like you go through EGMs, you see how the leaders are going through challenges, how they see the entity, and if you really go back home and consolidate by yourself, and you really know more about what this entity really means. And it's especially important in back office, because in back office, it's really easy for you to lose motivation because you can't see the big picture. And also in back office, it's really important for you to have the technical skills. So as a senior member, you're not only having the technical skills, but also the understanding on energy, and it will help a lot. Yeah.
Follow-up question, Ms. Kathy Kwan.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, seeing your manifesto, you emphasize a lot on about talent. Actually, according to my memory, back then when it was France's manifesto, she also emphasized a lot on TM. And but then I think this year is still a bit lacking. So, what will you do to emphasize to ensure that these plans about talent management will happen in your term?
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I really think that it's how we do planning and how we do communication. Like, how we do planning is that we really need to do early and detailed planning to let everything having a common picture in everyone's mind. Like, for example, the LCP wants to do these kind of things. He or she envision this kind of picture at the end, and he or she really needs to let the LCVPTM to know and to really get to that point. And then before getting to that point, they need to have a plan that they both or all the EB members or all the LT members own, and to really to achieve that plan together. It's never only about TM, and it's also about how the LTs are placing focuses on TM stuff. So it's also written in my manifesto, like, diffusion of TM into the whole entity. I want the LTs to be equipped with the TM knowledge and to really execute it.
Next question. Mr. Chris Chow.
Thank you, Chairperson. So just now you mentioned the way of motivating members is to let them to understand the big picture. I want you to talk about what do you mean by big picture in an FLA member's perspective to convince them. The big picture is like they would agree on.
Thumbs up, Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. Actually, people usually think that FLA department is a department that their members is difficult to understand the big picture, but it's not what in my mind. I think it's because of people usually think that how can member contribute to make AIESEC better? But actually, it's about what if we don't have FLA? Can you imagine if we don't have a finance, control all the budgets, control all the expenses, control all the revenues? AIESEC cannot even last for 1 year. And how can we talk about impact?
Before your follow-up question, I would like to remind the quorum that you will only have less than 15 minutes left to address your questions and concerns regarding Angie's manifesto. So please do take the opportunity. And Chris, please continue with your follow-up question.
Okay, so Angie, regarding your mission, you say you want to make AIESEC Institute relevant to CityU. Okay, so please define what you mean by relevant.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So the first thing is that CityU always emphasize on go global. They want a campus to be more globalized. They want the students to be more globalized. They want students to have the global exposure. But is it really that global? Are they only going to a few countries like the developing countries, or they are also covering the developing countries? I really think that that's the way how AIESEC can complement what CityU is doing, and to provide some projects in the developing countries to let people have more comprehensive picture on how the world really is. And the second thing is that actually what AIESEC is doing will definitely be relevant to everyone. It's just that we failed to show them the relevance. And like, it's impossible for someone to know leadership, you know. And we can just tell them how it's relevant to them.
Next question, Ms. Muskan Gandhi.
I would like to follow up on Chris' question. So when you talk about how is AIESEC relevant to every single one of us?
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So it's actually much more easier to understand it in a way that you imagine it's not in the place. It's not how it helps you to succeed in your life or what. It's about what will happen if people around you or you yourself don't have the leadership. Imagine you are being with someone who is not solution-oriented when you're doing team projects. You can't really have progress. Maybe they will just blame on how difficult the question is and not doing anything. And it's actually very applicable to every situation if you really think it in depth. So those qualities are what AIESEC Exchange are trying to develop. And imagine if everyone in CityU have that leadership qualities, you won't suffer those kind of stuff.
Time's up. Follow-up question, Ms. Muskan Gandhi. Waived. New question from the floor. Mr. Osama Nasa.
Thank you, Chairperson. My question is really simple. As for the president, I believe that every president's responsibility is to know what's going on among the organization, which I assume you would know too. So my question is really simple. If you were the president right now at this moment and it ends and you have to change one thing currently about AIESEC, what it would be? Thank you.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I think it's the standard of doing things. I think we need to define what is excellence and to what extent should AIESECers really perform. Sometimes we just perform it within our abilities and we don't even try to improve it. And I think that's a core thing that I want AIESEC to improve and I want to change in AIESEC.
Follow-up question. Mr. Osama Nasa.
One of the part of your manifesto says enlarging membership size. So if you talk about maintaining or improving the standard of defining terminologies, how do you plan to bring about it when there is an inflow of more and more members? Thank you.
Time's up, candidate. Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you. Actually, we can control how many people we recruit every year, and from past data, which proves that we are actually having a shrinking membership size, and like it's kind of admitted that that's the root cause of us having pipeline problems because we don't have enough people who are in the membership pool that are capable or who are interested in stepping up and become a manager or become a VP. So considering that we can easily know that recruiting more members will like kind of help solving this problem, and the consequences of having more members in the LC can actually be controlled by recruiting like more or less members in the next term, and also also develop a very comprehensive plan on how to develop every single member.
Any new question from the floor? Mr. Camlin Wu.
Just now you mentioned, thank you, Chairman. Chairperson, just now you mentioned earlier, you said you value quantity over quality. So perhaps you can tell us some of your goals for numbers and creating your, standards for evaluating, the experience. And in hindsight, can you also talk about more of your standards? Because you've mentioned standards many, many times, but it seems a bit vague to me. And last but not least, can you also talk about whether or not you think realistically it's possible for you to achieve those goals in our entity? Thank you.
Point of clarification from Ms. Angie Fong.
So just now my answer is I value quality more than quantity. So would you like to rephrase your question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Then just some goals, like some numerical goals you want to achieve every year. Do you have any?
Okay.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. For numerical goals, I can't really tell you at this stage because I really need to see who will be my EB team and what are they seeing in this entity and what they want to do. But I can tell you about IXP. I really wanted to start from having one member in each department, which is having one IXP member in each sub-team of front office, which means that it may be around 6 to 8 IXP in the coming year, and also having more and more in the future years.
Any follow-up question? Mr. Camlin Wu.
Yeah. In your manifesto here, you said that you want to derive your own standards for exchange experiences. So I'm guessing you want to have your own standards besides 16 standards, right? So can you tell us more about that? And do you think it's possible, like with the size of our entity, that we can sustain both 16 standards and the new standards that we set out?
Ms. Angie Fong.
So my direction of setting more standards is actually not going broader, like having some kind of different things to fulfill other than OPS and stuff. It's more like what we need to achieve in the OPS, what we need to achieve in the VD stage to make it a better, or to ensure us to really fulfill what we want to do. Like, we want to fulfill the potential of people who contribute to peace through exchanges. And that's the ultimate goal. And how we do it, we can set the benchmark with my EB team, and we can get the standard and to follow it throughout the year.
Your question from the floor. Ms. Agnes Low.
Thank you, Chairperson. So it seems that for the whole AIESEC in Hong Kong, for each year they have very new initiatives. For example, last year, or not new initiatives, but some change of direction. So like last year, we don't have the recruitment talk not recruitment talk for LT, but for winter exchange participants. And for this year, branding marketing team had also encountered some very rapid changes. And it seems that each time when encountering these changes, we are not prepared to cope with them, and the department suffers. So please tell us how you as a leader can lead the whole entity to cope and come over with these changes.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So actually, before adopting a change from the national or from the global direction, we need to really assess whether our LC are ready for it. If we decided that it's ready, the LC is ready for it, then we need to know what is the first step of kicking start of the changes, and we need to have a comprehensive plan of the change and how are we gonna take the action steps until we fully make the changes. And between that, we really need to have timely evaluation, which is written on my manifesto. I really want like every single member, not only member, but member of LC in every level, to really have this attitude to actively evaluate on their work and how the process is going. And I think that's the way we can quickly react to the changes. And if the changes is going to a wrong direction, we can really timely adjust and then to prevent it from becoming a worse problem.
Okay, follow-up question. Please let us know.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, what you say that, so from what you say that there will be a transition period, and I think, after that transition period, so mostly when the thing is ready to be to go on would be in semester B, and then how can you ensure that these things in the later semester can continue for the next term?
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. Firstly, I think it doesn't really take one semester to make some changes if we are really focusing on that. Maybe we do timely evaluation and we can adjust it fastly. For example, like the call station, it's a very new initiative starting from semester B, but now we're already kind of running it smoothly. So that's the first point I want to address. And the second point is how we can transfer this kind of changes down to the next session is actually highly depends on how we do transition. If we do a complete transition, or we do shadowing between sessions, then it will be better for the next term to understand the importance and also the loopholes and the benefits of that change and that strategy, and to carry out in the next term.
Okay, so can I have last question for Angie? Ms. Naomi Wong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So actually from your manifesto, you focused a lot on what members could bring to the entity, like you want them to be ISPs, CityU trainees, or to keep them striving high by being data-driven. But what about how would you develop members? Any directions so far? Thank you.
Final clarification from Ms. Angie Fong.
Sorry. So you focused a lot on, your manifesto focused a lot on what members could bring to the entity. For example, like what type of members you would like to recruit, like ISPs, or also to keep them striving high by being data-driven and such. But what about how would you develop your members? Any directions so far? Thank you.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So actually there's a very famous saying in AIESEC, like about, it's not AIESEC teaching you things, but you are learning things from AIESEC. What it actually means is that you can never get anything if you're not putting anything in AIESEC. So I think naturally, by giving yourself, giving your energy, giving your commitment to AIESEC, like you participate in the practical work, you can definitely learn the practical skills. But another thing is how the leaders do delegation. How they do delegation by giving them more work, or what kind of instructions are given, and what kind of feedback are given. And these three things actually make up a large amount of the membership experience. So if we can really set standards or really let every leader know how to do these kind of things, and I'm pretty sure that the membership experience would be great.
Any follow-up question? Waived. So, Muskan, can you please invite Irene back to the room? At time 2:48, Chairperson receives General Motion number 3, which reads that the warmest welcome to be given to Ms. Kelly Wong, Local Committee President of AIESEC and CityU Session 1617, Ms. Linda Tam, Local Committee Vice President of Outgoing Global Volunteer of AIESEC and CityU Session 1617, Ms. Lattice Lee, Local Committee Vice President of Branding and Marketing of AIESEC and CityU of Session 1617, and I have a proposal from the floor. Ms. Naomi Wong, seconder. Mr. Gary Christopher will propose a speak for the motion proposal.
So hello Kelly, hello Lattice, and hello Linda. So thank you for coming to Irene's and Angie's EGM. And yeah, so unfortunately, you guys haven't asked questions for Angie yet, but feel free to raise questions for Irene's round, so that to facilitate her growth throughout her election journey. Thank you.
Seconder.
Thank you, Chairperson. Hi, Kelly, Lattice, and Linda. Welcome back to this EGM setting. So we hope that you guys will challenge the candidates and see whether their plan really fits our entity to bring this entity forward in the future.
Any general comment? If no, Chairperson assumes that motion passed with acclamation. Okay, Irene, please proceed to the stage. And similar to Angie, Irene will have 30 minutes for you to address her manifesto. Can I have the first question from the floor? Mr. Atlas, no. Miss Atlas, no, sorry.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, Irene, as you mentioned about having more campus engagement, and it's been, we have been contacting different departments, not only just this year but before. But it seems that we don't have that much response. So, what do you think? What kind of bargaining power do we have when we are negotiating with departments? Thank you.
Time's up, Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. So first of all, why it's not working is not mainly because AIESEC and CityU do not have relevance to the campus, but more so that we do not have a very sustainable, or I would say very consistent engagement like with the campus. So what we call a collaboration, it should be a two-way thing. But for instance, it's like we have yet to show the school how we can support the school in terms of reaching their campus goals. Because for instance, the school talks about integrating locals and non-locals, or internationalizing the people by going exchange. Actually, that's one point that AIESEC and CityU can actually work on to help the school to show the school how we are relevant. But that's why in my manifesto I also mentioned about engaging in the relevant events, such as like walkie-talkie, the one held by GSO, and then CityU Empowerment Project, such as like that.
Follow-up question. Waived. Second question, Mr. Chris Chow.
Please comment on this sentence. Learning comes with mistake. Okay, thank you, Chairperson.
Ms. Ari. Thank you, Chairperson. So I personally agree with that statement because I myself have learned the most based on my own mistakes. So I can give an example, which is during this LCP election. So when I failed the first round of LCP application, I realized that the mistake is not really solely just because of capability, but because I have failed to see things in different perspectives. And I learned a whole lot after realizing that, because it's only when you realize your mistake and you admit it that you can actually try to reach out to solve the problem or solve your shortcomings. And that's why I do believe that learning comes with mistakes, but more importantly is that you have to admit you made a mistake.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chris Chow.
Thank you, Chairperson. So if section 1819 cannot afford to make another crucial mistake, which will affect future sections. Please comment on this sentence with your answer in the last
Ms.
question.
Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. It's because we already made a mistake in the past that we're not supposed to make it again. Why I put it there is because I do believe that by learning we do make mistakes, but making the same mistake twice is something that should not be accepted, especially the fact that the mistake will definitely affect the future sessions. For instance, it's what I mean here is about talent pipeline, right? So if we were to make another mistake in terms of like talent recruitment for next session, the mistake will actually affect at least 2 years of the future sessions. And that's the mistake that we cannot afford to make because that's the mistake we saw in the latest few sessions.
At time 2:54, Chairperson receives procedural motion, general motion number 4, which reads that the warmest welcome to be given to Ms. Mary Chow, Local Committee Vice President of External Relations and Outgoing Global Talent of AIESEC and CityU Session 1617, and Ms. Nadia Lam, the Local Committee Vice President of External Relations and Outgoing Global Talent of HKBU of Session 1718, as well as Mrs. Thomas Cho, the Local Committee Vice President of Outgoing Global Talent of AIESEC and HKU of Session 1718. Can I have the proposal from the floor? Ms. Naomi Wong, seconder. Mr. Gary Christopher, will proposal speak? Proposal.
Hello, Mary. Thank you for coming back. Please make use of your experience last year to ask questions for our candidate and to facilitate her growth throughout her election journey. And hello, Thomas and Nadia. So thank you for taking your time to come to Irene and Angie's EGM. So also feel free to raise questions for both of them to facilitate their growth. Thank you.
Seconder.
Thank you, Chairperson. So welcome back, Mary, to this EGM campaign. So I hope you can challenge your predecessor so she can be successor. Sorry, wrong English. You can challenge your successor so she can grow further and ensure that her plan can actually sustain our entity. And of course to Nadia and Thomas as well, welcome to our EGM. Please support our candidate here, which is your fellow standing committee mate, and ensure that she can actually bring this entity forward. Thank you.
Any general comment? If no, Chairperson assumes that motion passed with acclamation. And the Q&A will resume. Can I have the question from the floor? Mr. Gary Christopher.
Thank you, Chairperson. So Irene, you have talked a lot about building more campus relations and such, but the reality is in the past 2 years we have lost quite a few key partners. For example, SDS pulled out the plug and they didn't fund us anymore, and College of Business just rejected our offer to partner with them. So what is wrong with these? What have been wrong, and what are the things which you do differently?
Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. So first I'll talk about what went wrong. What went wrong is the fact that right now, SDS or whether it's SDS or CB, they have their own opportunities for like exchanges. And the fact that back a few sessions ago, we do not have a strong competition on campus because you can say that our edge lies on the fact that we have opportunities for our students. But the fact is, like I said in the first round of Q&A, we in fact are losing our edge because of the rise in competitors. Why SDS no longer come to us, or you can say kind of trying to abandon us, is the fact that at the end of the day, the school would like to have something that they have control upon, such as GWAP. They won't come to us and rely on us for exchanges because they cannot fully control AIESEC and CityU. And for me, that's the main reason as to why this is becoming a problem.
Follow-up question, Mr. Gary Christopher.
Thank you, Jefferson. So what would you do to attract them back?
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So as stated on my manifesto, you can see that I talked about how that our exchange opportunities are no longer our main edge or uniqueness, and the uniqueness actually lies on the people, and that is us, and also on our EP. But I would like to put the focus back into us as AIESEC and CityU AIESECers, is that we need to show this campus that we're different through our value delivery. Whether it's about being firm about why we do exchanges, or about how we can facilitate the learning of our EP. Because I do know that the school internships, they also have their own workshop, they have their own briefing sessions, but they do not really rely a lot about like, how do you facilitate the growth of the exchange participants. And that's our edge. And instead of like going heads on saying that we have better opportunities, it's better that we tell the school that we can actually work together towards a bigger picture. Next question, Ms. S.B. Chakin.
There's an image of AIESEC that's already been like, thank you, Chair, first. There's an image of AIESEC that's already formed in like CityU students, and it is not in a good state, to be honest. And like, how do you think you need to change that image? And like, it's not like you're talking that we need to like show why we're different and like our uniqueness, but I personally do not think that the content is not the main problem here, because like how they see, like they do not take that step to get inside the society to actually understand what it's about. Like they just like hear the AIESEC name and they step back. So like how do you think you need to change that image to make them like step forward?
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So actually that relates back to my manifesto, which is the second focus area. So first of all, it's why is it like this? It's because internally speaking, the AIESECers in this LC are also very, very doubtful about the brand itself. And that actually affects, because just imagine if the people inside AIESEC do not believe or see the vision of AIESEC, how are they going to sell AIESEC? And another point to make is, why is it that people go away when they heard AIESEC? It's because they already know what to expect, and they already know what we're going to say. Which is why I mentioned about boosting like EP to IXP conversion, is because one bottleneck is always that we fail to show people the people that we developed, or people that actually grew from our platform. So that is actually another way of showing what we're actually doing. Any follow-up question? Yeah. Ms. S.B. Chakin.
Thank you, Chairperson. One of the things that has been taught to us when we first became members is how to work as a brand and how to protect the brand image. But actually becoming a brand and extracting ourselves from the society itself, or the students themselves, and acting we're different, we're unique, and we know our values and we know what we want to achieve. Don't you think it's a bit putting a barrier between AIESEC society and the CityU student society?
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So actually that phenomenon I can relate back to myself. I have a lot of friends who talk bad about AIESEC to my face, but I think as a good walking brand, it's not telling them you're wrong and I'm right, what you're saying about AIESEC is wrong, but more you have to show them that despite what they're saying, you're still holding firm as to what you believe in through this entity. Because again, like I mentioned in the first round, AIESEC is not for everyone. And it's not about going out there and telling people that this is the #1 organization, other people are not considered, because that's not how it's supposed to be. And second, it's about putting AIESEC in another level, like mentioned just now. It's not supposed to be like that, because we're supposed to be accessible to everyone, right? So I guess, again, perhaps it goes back to how we portray ourselves, and to tell people that we're not that different. Next question, Miss Mary Chow.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, Irene, I would like to know, would you mind defining the positioning of each of the functional areas suggested by your proposed structure? Thank you.
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So for front office, which is OGV and OGT, for me, how we position them is they are exchange facilitator. However, for IGT, it's a bit different because they're bringing people in, and it's actually a department where you give chances for people to reach out to the actual world, I would say. But at the same time, bringing people in means that you get to show the whole LC the impact of AIESEC in a more direct manner. But for ER, my main positioning of this department is that it's how we can reach back to our campus. Because to be honest, it feels like the campus no longer wants us around, I would say. Because as you can see, like SDS has cut our financial support to us, and ER is very important for that. But BM, on the other hand, is about reaching out to our customers. And for TM, it's really about how we develop each and every one of the members and team leaders. And last but not least, for FLA and IM, it's really about being data-driven. Any follow-up question, Ms. Mary Chow?
Thank you, Chairperson. So would you mind elaborating more on the rationale behind allocating B2C to OGET instead of also allocating it to OGV? And also, what's the difference between BM, the functional area of BM, and the B2C function of OGET, as well as also elaborating more on the positioning of the TM, as you mentioned in the manifesto that you're going to enhance the positioning of it. Thank you.
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So first question, which is about why there's B2C to OGET, is because based on the current experience this year, how we reach out to students for OGV and OGT is way too different, and I don't want it to happen where the BM is unable to be fully maximized in terms of our exchange products. Because to be honest, BM can do a lot on OGV, but at the other hand, OGT can do their own marketing because, truth be told, like in the beginning of the semester, in terms of workload-wise, OGT is lesser than OGV. And another thing about the difference, the TM, if I'm right, positioning of TM. So TM is about our people. And for me, what I mean by repositioning it is not just putting TM as the person to oversee the development of our people, but as the direct advisor as well to each team leader in terms of how we can facilitate the development of the people. New question from the floor. Mr. Kao Young.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, actually from my perspective, AIESEC is a good organization, but also not good organization. Looking back to the previous years, the performance can be good, can be not good. I want to know from you is that why do you think AIESEC is a kind of from your perspective, unique organization? Maybe 5 elements that make it so special. Thank you.
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So for me, the first one that I feel like this place is unique is it's very accepting of non-local students. And for me, that's important because you learn from people who's different. And this place provides that opportunity. Second, it's not all organizations give you an opportunity to step up to another, kind of like a very clear ladder. But what makes AIESEC different is that you can actually go overseas. Like this place, this platform gives you a chance to try out different leadership positions, not just in Hong Kong but also overseas. And third, it's instead of just the leadership opportunities, it's also the opportunities for conversations. Not a lot of organizations facilitate or give space for us to actually talk about things that is deemed unusual in other places. And fourth, it's how we always emphasize on development, and that is something that is not always happening outside. Follow-up question. Mr. Kaoya.
Your chairperson. So, as I heard, there are four elements: diversity and open-minded culture, delegation of opportunities, and development. And sorry, I may have missed one of the two of them. Can you still?
Oh, diversity, being open-minded,
yeah.
Opportunities overseas.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I need you to delete two of them, what are they?
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So I think instead I'll talk about what I will not delete. So I will delete actually the overseas opportunities, and I will delete the what do you call that? The clear stepping the clear ladder, because I want to keep diversity and having space for conversations. Because for me, it's not necessary for everyone to take up like a leadership role overseas, because at the end of the day, you have to think of how you can contribute back to your own place. So why I think that diversity and having the space to converse is very important, because I believe that you learn by interacting with people, you learn by knowing what's different about you and what others are better at. So these are the two things that I will not delete in terms of the elements that I want to see. New question. Mr. Osama Nazar.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'll give you a scenario. If I put you in a room with a little crying baby, how would you make the child stop crying? Thank you.
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So first of all, it's to give the baby comfort for sure, by holding onto it and just swaying it. But more importantly is to know what is the problem, because babies cry for various reasons, whether they need a change of diaper, whether they are hungry, or they have like some stomach ache. That's like three main things about why baby cry. So after knowing the reason, that's when I have to take action based on what I think the reason is. And I think like babies, they are very comforted by warmth, because that's my experience to my little babies at home. Not mine, I mean like my niece and nephews. So I think it's very important to just stay with them and to move them around, because they have to know your presence. Yeah. Follow-up question, Mr. Osama Nazar.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll tell you the reason I asked this question. Basically, how you pamper babies is you give them a candy or something for which they haven't done and reward them, about which they feel that they're getting something in return. One thing about AIESEC, and one of the many outlook people have in AIESEC, is that AIESEC is very demanding. The amount of effort you put in, at the end of the year, the amount of return you get onto it is not justified. So the reason I asked you this question is, how can you make a difference in that regards, that people, I'm talking about in the context of recruiting members, not EPs, just when in the next term you recruit members, that at the end of the term, they would be satisfied and content with the amount of effort they put in. Thank you.
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So actually, I thought of that question previously, and on my manifesto under Sustainable Talent Pipeline, I actually talked about having a more comprehensive job description. Because the normal scenario in AIESEC is that we recruit people not based on what we need, and oftentimes there's two ways of seeing it. One, there's not enough people to execute the plan, or second, we have wasting people's time because they don't have a proper role in the entity. That's why it's very important that we ensure we have a plan, like this is your job description, this is the outcome we want to see after 1 year, and that's something that we really have to reestablish. That's why I put it there. And another thing is to have like a really comprehensive tracking as well by the team leaders. That's why I said that all managers or all team leaders have to know about the fundamental TM knowledge that is required for this. There will be 5 more minutes for Irene's Q&A, so I think I can cater 2 more. Can I have the next question? Ms. Muskan Gandhi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Propose a new initiative for engage with AIESEC that AIESEC in CityU can adopt.
Point of clarification. Engagement with AIESEC?
Yeah,
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So actually I thought of having, like some of the LCs, they have local volunteering, right? And I feel like we can implement that here in CityU because there's actually a large number of people who wants to do volunteering. If you can see like City Youth Empowerment Project, those are like a large group of people who's very passionate about volunteering. And they usually have like one-off volunteering services. And I personally went to one of it, and the number of people is always high. So I think like it's a very good potential to work on, and it's a good start to like take CYEP as a reference. And why I think it's gonna benefit us is because, for instance, if we are able to penetrate to the group of CYP students who are already very engaged with volunteering, they can actually think one step further, which is volunteering overseas. So that's how I see it. Follow-up question, Ms. Muskan Gandhi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Now that you've mentioned about CYP, and if both of the organizations, CYP and AIESEC, have local volunteering opportunities, and CYP also has overseas internship opportunities, what would be the competitive advantage or selling point of you penetrating in CYP's market and promoting AIESEC?
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So I joined CYP like at least 3 times, and one of the problems I faced as a non-local is that it's very hard for us to make an impact because we have very weak communication with the people that we're volunteering. So it's like I was teaching English to, let's say, no, I'm not English, I'm just teaching math to local students who don't really have a good like English skill. So at the end of the day, I always ask my fellow local friends to do the translation, and at the end of the day, it feels like I did nothing. And that's when AIESEC can make have a competitive edge, is because us in AIESEC, we can focus on, instead of doing more very local volunteering, there's actually a lot of aspect in Hong Kong we can work on, like ethnic minorities, which CYP is doing as well. So I would say there's actually a chance to collaborate instead of like going like heads on to compete. At time 3:17, Chairperson reads general motion number 4, which reads that the warmest welcome be given to Mr. Kendrick Intan, Local Committee Vice President of Finance and Legal Affairs of AIESEC in CityU session 16 to be here. May I have the proposal from the floor? Ms. Naomi Wong, seconder. Mr. Gary Christopher, who will speak for motion proposal.
Hello, Kendrick. So thank you for coming to Angie and Irene's BGM. So although it's towards Irene's second round questions ending, but feel free to raise questions in round 3 to facilitate their growth throughout the election day. Thank you.
Seconder.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, hi, Henry. Welcome back to the AGM. Like, your presence has always been encouraged by us. We hope that you can enjoy this EGM and can challenge Irene, like as a fellow Indonesian. Like, you must be proud that seeing another person stepping up to be the LCP of this entity. So please challenge her and ensure that her plans are good enough to sustain our entity.
Any general comment? If no, Chairperson assumes that motion passed with acclamation. New question. Mr. Marston Lam.
Thank you, Chairperson. I really upset about achieving the big picture regarding the question one. And do you think AIESEC is in the big picture of City University in the future?
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So based on the roadmap of CityU for the 5 years roadmap, so they talk about two things that I can relate back to AIESEC. First is globalization, which I have talked about back in the first round. But second is actually the entrepreneurship, because they talk about wanting to boost the culture of being entrepreneurial and also boosting the number of CityU students who actually want to have a startup. So how I relate that back to AIESEC is because AIESEC is actually a platform for you to try a lot of things. And for instance, like as a VP or as a manager, there's lots of time that you have space to innovate new things. And you can actually not just perform, but there's many times you fail. So actually for me, that relates back to entrepreneurial spirit. And we can actually boost GE product in this sense on campus, though I would say it requires a longer term plan.
Follow-up question. Wait. Okay, so this will mark the end of the second round of Q&A. And Muskan, please go out and invite Angie back to the room. Okay, meanwhile, let me describe the rules for the last round of Q&A. Can you please proceed to the next slide? So last round will be for general questions. So basically regarding anything you want to address to the candidate, not necessary to be the plan or not necessary to be the leadership. But it's up to you. But this is the last time that you can raise questions for the candidate. And both of them will be like the first round. Two of them will be on the stage. And yeah, let's wait until Angie got ready and then we can start. At time 3:21, Chairperson receives procedural motion number 13, which reads that the third round question and answer session for local committee president candidates session 2018 and 19 be commenced. May I have a proposal from the floor? Ms. Naomi Wong, seconder. Ms. Kathy Kwan, who proposes to speak for the motion? Wait. Seconder, wait. Any general comment? If not, motion put to vote. Any abstain against? If not, Chairperson assumes that motion passed unanimously. Okay, so this will be the last round of Q&A, and please expect this session will be within 60 minutes. So can I have the first question from the floor? Mr. Adrian Poon.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I'd like to ask, what is your philosophy in promoting our brand image? Would you choose a way that's closer to the needs of the audience or closer to the delivery of the key values of AIESEC?
Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I was talking about this to one of our fellow alumni, and one statement that came to my mind is, sometimes we cater too much. And it's like, sometimes we are trying too hard to relate our brand to the mass audience. And for me, it's about how you can hold firm to what you believe in this organization and to showcase that to them. Because I think I mentioned it on the first and second round Q&A is that AIESEC is not for everyone, and we don't have that much resources right now in this LC to develop or cater to everyone. So what we can do is to hold firm into what we want to do and to attract people that actually can relate or be relevant to what we're trying to achieve, so that we can allocate our resources based on people who actually need it or can actually utilize AIESEC as a platform. Follow-up question. Oh, sorry, Miss Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I hold some kind of opposite feels to us this one. I think that AIESEC shouldn't have a gap between AIESEC and the audience that we are having, because at the end AIESEC is doing stuff for the world, it's doing stuff for people, it's not just doing stuff for people within AIESEC. And it's like how we do it is by we hold on in our core, we distinguish what is our core, we really need to know what is our core, and then we see how can we holding our core and at the same time fit into the situation, fit into the century that we're in. And like on marketing perspective, it's more like how can we communicate the importance of leadership and how can we communicate the benefit of exchanges into the audience, because at the end, leadership is for everyone. Leadership is relevant to everyone. It's no way that it's not relevant to anyone. So if we can let them know, then the
Time's up. Follow-up question. Mr. Adrian Poon.
Thank you, Chairperson. So a lot of people would accuse AIESEC's failure in promotion because of their fluffiness in delivering the key message. And oh god. So the philosophy between the whole foundation of AIESEC would be pushing people to doing exchange, and then they come back, and hopefully one of them would become a leader. So you're saying that a leader is not for it's not for everyone. AIESEC might not be for everyone. So isn't that a little bit contradictory to the foundation of AIESEC? Like yeah.
Time's up, candidate. Candidate, Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I do admit that I heard that a lot as well, like saying that AIESEC is very fluffy and they don't think it's like relevant and stuff. But one thing to clarify, what I mean by AIESEC is not for everyone is, AIESEC is not a platform where it suits everyone, because we have so much different people in the world. And that goes back to answering your question as, like being a non-local, looking at the local community, I can see why people are very against the fluffiness of AIESEC. It's because the way you were brought up have shaped the very like practical and realistic kind of behavior that I noticed ever since I came here. And I guess it's not about trying to make it less fluffy to cater people, but how do you actually relate that fluffiness to people? And I guess that's a bigger thing to work on instead of working on how we can be more practical.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So actually, against the statement that AIESEC is not for everyone, I think I have a different understanding on that statement. I don't think that it's completely wrong, but it's more like whether we have the capacity to develop everyone. At the end, we are a youth-run organization, and we have our limitations. We cannot really cater everyone's need of development. The better way to maximize our impact is to choose the right one, and develop them, and develop another right one to make them develop more others. And that's the true meaning of AIESEC is not for everyone, I think.
Follow-up question. Oh, new question. Mr. Harry Chen.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can you let me know, in accordance to your plan, what would be the critical success factor and why? Just choose one.
Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. For me, if I were to choose, I would choose progression rate as my key indicator of success. Mainly because for next session, it's my vision to see a place where people knows what they're getting from this place. A lot of people are leaving this place within a year or less than a year because they do not see how they're developing in this place. That's why it's for me, I talk a lot about like how we can actually reposition or enhance TM. It's because I want this place to be a place where people get something in return, so that they are willing to stay for another year because they want other people to get what they got. So,
Sorry, point of clarification from Mr. Harry Chen.
Thank you, Chairperson. I mean critical success factor. So what determines whether your plan success or succeed or not? Like one single thing that makes your plan succeed, or if that things fail, your plan fails.
Ms. Angie Fong.
I think the critical factor is that if people can see the purpose of doing AIESEC. And if people can't see the purpose of doing AIESEC, they cannot see how they can they need to develop people here. They can just look at the figures that they have and then be happy about that. But it's not the case that my plan will work if it's that way. And I need people to know what's the purpose of running AIESEC and to really get people developed, and also not just the members that they are leading, but also the EPs that they are managing, to make sure that they have a good exchange experience. So I think the purpose that they have on running AIESEC is the critical factor that will affect whether my plan works or not.
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So my plan involves a lot about building a very, shaping a learning culture. So if at the end of session 18-19, there are still people telling me that they have wasted their time in AIESEC, then all my plans is a failure. Because whether it's about the talent pipeline, whether it's about the brand of the organization, for me it all goes back to wanting to keep the leadership promise that we gave to the members back in the recruitment talk. So if at the end of the term, there are still people who do not see the purpose of AIESEC and the relevance of AIESEC to the world, then that would mean that the whole plan is a failure.
Follow-up question, Mr. Harry Chen.
Thank you, Chairperson. So if there's only one single KPI that you have to measure by the end of the year, what would be that?
Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. For me, it's still going to be progression rate, because I think we currently live in an era where people do not want to waste their time on things they find irrelevant or things they do not see a value in. So if at the end of session 18-19, there's a low progression rate, it means that, again, I have failed to build a learning culture in this organization, and I have failed to show the relevance of their personal growth to this organization. And that is why progression rate is still my main KPI if I were to choose one. And furthermore, it's also about how we can make them realize that they can actually bring another impact to other people. So if people were to stay, usually another reason is they think they can make an impact in this place. And that requires us to build something to build an environment where they are ready to fail in terms of doing things. Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I think there won't be an easy way to measure whether people are running AIESEC because of that single purpose. But I think a way that we can take reference to is to compare the NPS and the progression rate. And from that we can know whether people like the experience and whether they are staying. And we can also do focus group on the members to know whether they stay because of like which part of the membership experience and how good the membership experience is. And in order to give insights to the extern on how to improve their membership experience and to let people know more about the purpose of running AIESEC.
New question. Mr. Kawya.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, what do you think is the greatest danger for AIESEC in CityU at this for AIESEC in CityU?
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. The greatest danger of AIESEC in CityU, I think, is trying to compete with others. And by trying to compete with others, it's kind of losing your core value because we are an organization that is doing peace and performance exponential, and it doesn't mean that only us can do it. And if we are having the thought of competing with others, for example, CityU, GWAP, we need to have higher numbers than GWAP. It's basically impossible. And by doing that, we may need to change our product. We may need to change the way of doing our exchanges. And in that way, we're losing our core, and we are not at AIESEC anymore.
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So it goes back to me just now saying about how our uniqueness is no longer on exchange, because truth be told, like what Angie has mentioned, competitors on campus is overwhelming, and there's really a little chance that we can actually kind of beat them, which I have placed on the manifesto. That's why we have to work on the people. But it's a very AIESEC in CityU culture to be fighting or striving for performance. That's why it's oftentimes that this LC do not talk a lot about AIESEC way. They don't really relate our operation back to the big picture. And for me, that's a danger because, again, our exchange is no longer our uniqueness. And we have been putting so much effort on something on a battle that we're losing with the school. And that's why it's very essential for next year to change this mindset.
Follow-up question. Mr. Kawya.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, what do you think the entity as a whole should do to defend that and emphasize the uniqueness of AIESEC in CityU? And why should you to lead that? To lead the whole entity?
Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. Actually, I'll start with the recruitment for next session. So oftentimes we do not really emphasize a lot about the values of AIESEC in our recruitment talks. We actually talk a lot more about what are the practical things that you can gain from AIESEC. But because of that, we have recruited people who expect to get a whole lot of practical experiences instead of recruiting people who thinks about the big picture. And that actually leads back to a wrong expectation setting in the very beginning. That's why what AIESEC and CityU can do as a whole. First is, of course, to actually relay the message, the strong message of what is the end picture of AIESEC. And second is for the team leaders of AIESEC and CityU to be aware that it's very important to have a relevance between the big picture of AIESEC and our operations, which again requires a knowledge of talent management, which I have also talked about previously.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I think the uniqueness of AIESEC in CityU lies in that we are youth run. But youth run it doesn't only mean that we are only having university students here, but we are actually having university students all over the world running AIESEC. And that's very important, that connection we have, that we are running for a single purpose, peace and fulfillment from class potential. We are all in AIESEC and we are doing it together. And that connection is the thing that makes us special. And why do I think with this uniqueness, I need to be the LCP of next year is that if it's youth run and if it proves that our quality and our way of running exchange is better than what the school is doing, and it kind of gives people hope on how youth power can actually change the world problem. And I think it needs to be done by good execution. And that's why I think I'm more suitable.
Okay, Chairperson would like to draft the final question list for the last round of Q&A. So if you have a last questions for the candidate, please do raise your hand, and when I call upon your name, put down your hand. Okay, Mr. Osama Neza, Mr. Ali, what's his name, sorry, Ali. Mr. Gary Christopher, Ms. Naomi Wong, Ms. S.D. Chakin, Mr. Andrew Rafael, Mr. Kendrick Intan, Ms. Muskan Gandhi, Ms. Dallas Lotto, Mr. Chris Chow, Ms. Kathy Kwan, Ms. Mint Wazalayu, Ms. Kelly Wong. Any more? I haven't called your name. Mr. Calvin Wong, any more? Okay, then we can start with Osama.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think we've heard a lot about what you guys individually are bringing to AIESEC next for the following year. And I believe by the end of today's EGM, individually you must think that one of your proposals is better than your counterpart's proposal. That's why you're here for the President Chair. So my question is, it's keeping whatever you've said aside, it's a bit different. It's about that by 7 o'clock when the winner will be announced. I want to know that, of course, one of you would win, one of you would lose, but I want to know how would you address your counterpart given that Irene wins and Angie loses, or if Irene loses or Angie wins. How would you address your counterpart if you win?
Time's up, candidate. Candidate, Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. So if I were to lose, first off, it's of course to give my full support to Angie, because I do believe that the ones voting, which is the members, you guys are the one who chose like who do you think is the better leader for next session. And if I were to win, how I would address my counterpart is still to engage her for next session. Because if you were to actually stand up for this role, to apply to go through this long application journey, it means that you really care about this place. And AIESEC Institute needs more people who care about this place. And just because we lost the election doesn't mean that it's time for us to leave. And hence, there will always be a place for you in AIESEC if you care enough. Whether it's as a local support team, whether as is to be a VP one more year, or actually to go to an MC level. There's many ways. So I will definitely be there to support no matter what.
Angie Fong.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. So no matter what, no matter I win or lose, no matter like what happens, like the first thing I'm gonna do is to hug Irene. Yeah, because we are the only one who know how difficult it is to apply for the president. And it's not only applying for the president, but you actually have the competitor here. Yeah, and at the same time, you are still teammates and you still need to work together, but you need to prove that you are better than the other one, and which is very painful. And I guess we are the only one who understand each other at this point, and I just want to give her a hug no matter what.
Any follow-up question? Wait, next question goes to Mr. Ali Marashli.
some aspects of your plan, personality, or values, why would you think you're a better fit for the position of the ICP?
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So actually, it's nothing about the plan. I think the reason I'm better than Irene, because actually if you read it really carefully, our plan are actually very similar. And a lot of the parts are similar. When the parts are similar, actually it's a lot about execution, how you execute the things. And in this area, I'm quite confident that I can execute maybe better. So I think it makes me a more suitable candidate.
Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. So for me, I talk a lot about like how do you actually create a culture in this organization, which I think is lacking for the past few sessions. And that's why I believe that compared to Angie, as someone who is a person, I think that I'm more vision driven and I am able to engage people better. So I believe that that aspect I can do better. And like she said, like our plans are actually not much different. But I do believe in terms of like execution, based on my experience as a VP, execution has been something that I'm pretty confident about as well. And why I think this is needed in the next session is because you need a balance between how you can connect to the big picture and how you can connect operations as well. So I'm confident that I can do that.
Any follow-up question? Wait. Next question goes to Mr. Gary Christopher.
Thank you, Chairperson. So we often see Professor Wei Kuo wandering around in campus alone. So we often see him in Delifrance sitting alone, or even in McDonald's in Festival of sitting alone. So my question is, would you consider approaching him if you're elected at LCP? Would you consider approaching him? And if you are approaching him, what would you say to him about AIESEC? If you don't want to approach him, why?
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm not gonna approach him because I think we still don't have the enough qualities or enough proof to tell him that AIESEC in CityU actually matters in CityU. And I'm gonna get more stories, more of these kind of stories, like how the EP are developed, how they really feel that AIESEC is significant in this university, and how the members really think that they are developed in this entity. And I'm gonna get these kind of proof, and then get to approach Professor Wei.
Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. There are several reasons why I will not approach him. First, it's about professionalism. So that's something that AIESEC has always emphasized on. And the fact that if we were to approach him very casually, it goes against what professionalism we want to build in this entity. Second, if you read my last page of manifesto, I actually indicate that it's going to be a long-term plan before we can actually have the bargaining power to approach the higher-ups. And right now, like what Angie has mentioned, we do not have the bargaining power yet because, as you can see, there's insignificant growth in terms of exchange. We have yet to even impact 1% of the undergraduate community in CityU. And imagine going to Waco and be like, hi, we're AIESEC, and we have managed to impact 0.08% of the campus, and that's not something we should be proud of.
Any follow-up question? Mr. Gary Christopher.
Thank you, Jefferson. So as an LCP, how long would you think that it's adequate for us to collect proofs to finally approach him?
Time's up, candidate. Miss Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. Actually, I don't think it's a matter of the quantity. It's like they are also doing exchanges. They send much more people than us. Why should we tell them how many exchanges we're doing? I think it's only about how much that.
Point of clarification from Mr. Gary Christopher.
It's how long, like how many years?
Yeah, I'm gonna address it later. Yeah. So it's about how that person actually are developed through our exchanges and how highly it recommends our projects and recommends AIESEC. So if the plans are carried out and the exchange are good, like excellent, like that the EP actually feels that they are getting what AIESEC claims that they can have after going through exchange, I think it can be done in 1 year.
Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. So actually, I've worked with several colleges in CityU outside of AIESEC, and one thing I can say about CityU is that if it's something that they cannot gain benefit from directly, they will really do not give any care about it. Because truth be told, for example, WeCall usually appear in events where it's very relatable to the goal of CityU. Like for instance, when he went to the Indonesian night of hall last month, it's because it's to show that he appreciates the culture of others, because that's what we're trying to do, like integrating locals and non-locals. So on the plan that I put on my manifesto, I can see that we need 3 years, because this year we need to work on actually getting connected to those people, and next year to create an event big enough to be relevant to CityU's goal and big enough to catch the attention of WeCall.
Next question goes to Ms. Naomi Wong.
Thank you, Chairperson. We are a youth leadership movement, but are we generating the leaders we wish to see? This question is printed on Irene's cover manifesto. So please answer in this order, Angie first and Irene. So for Angie, answer this question printed on Irene's manifesto with the current situation of AIESEC and CityU. For Irene, why do you ask this question? Thank you.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I think it's a yes. If it's not about quantity, then I think it's a yes. You can look at like now we have 2 candidates sitting here, seeing the possibilities and seeing the impact of AIESEC, and I think that's the leadership that we wish to see, and it's proven by us that it's kind of working, but it's just about the degree or just about how significant it is to let the others know.
Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. Actually, why I asked this question relates back to our leadership model. So if you actually see the points under the 4 leadership model, you can try to think back to yourself. Are you like that? Because when I was preparing for this LCP application, I look back to those points and I do not see a very strong relevance to those statements to AIESEC and CityU. We have yet to develop people that I am confident to say that, we have achieved what we promised. We have achieved to create leaders based on the LDM. And that's why I asked this question, because I do think that we still have a lot to do if we were to actually wanting to see leaders that can actually fulfill the 4 leadership qualities that we mentioned.
Any follow-up question? Waived. Next question goes to Ms. Angie Checken.
Thank you, Chairperson. Who's your favorite writer, and how do you think their way of representation how do you think their way of creating a world that is like real or fiction actually shows your perspective on life, and how do you think that perspective actually shapes what kind of like AIESEC you want to create in the future.
Miss Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. So actually, my favorite writer is Sophie Kinsella. So I'm not sure if you have heard of her, but I grew up reading her novels, and why I related back to AIESEC is her stories are mainly about people facing life challenges, and it's very casual thing. It's not like those really deep books, but it shows the realistic life, and it shows how a person have to face the challenges, how people have to face the fact that life is not always good, because a lot of her novels has characters that has actually a typical good life before something bad happens. And I want to create an AIESEC in CityU where people are ready to face those kind of like sudden life-changing incident where people do not run away from it, but like the characters of Sophie Kinsella, to just go heads on and then face the challenges.
Ms. Angie Fong. Thank you, Chairperson. So I'm not good at remembering names, but I would recommend the writer of Winning, the book I just mentioned. Why I like this book a lot is that he used a lot of examples to let everyone, not only the professionals that it's in the industry, but also the one that are like us. We are just students that we don't really know much about management. He used a lot of examples to explain, and I think that's a way of how I can let my members understand how AIESEC value really is. And yeah, that's a thing that I like about him, and I want to do it in my entity.
Any follow-up question?
Ms.
Esky Chakin.
Thank you, Chairperson. Like, what do you think, like, from what you understand, from the book that you have read, like, as a difference between the writer's personality and your personality? How do you think that person's creation of world will differ from the way, like, the path that you will take to create the world that you want to achieve, like, that you want to see in AIESEC? Like, the personality differences and, like, the way that you want to think.
Point of clarification from Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. So it's how my personality is different from the writer. So how I would write the story differently?
Not like the story, because like that person, like with that personality wrote a book that you enjoyed, then like you like that writer's perspective on that book. And like you have a perspective on AIESEC, and you're a different person, so you have a different personality. But if you want to follow that path that the writer has taken to create that book, what kind of a path do you want to take to actually create the world that you want to see in AIESEC?
Time's up, candidate. Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. So actually, the path I'll take it's very similar to the one that I mentioned in your first question. So for me, it's like in AIESEC, it's about how if I were to be elected as LCP, how I would actually be a role model for others. And it goes back to the story that I mentioned. It's because it's very often that people face challenges in life, but it's very often that people are like me in the past that would just sway away from the challenges. But what these stories talk about is how you would actually stop running away and to just face it. And that's the kind of road that I want to take in this entity. And that's the kind of path that I wish the entity's members will also go as well, so that eventually, after they were to leave AIESEC in the end, they would actually bring back or have a personality that can actually impact themselves.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think my path that I'm gonna take is really to spend effort in explaining everything, like what the writer in Meaning do, like really to try his best in explaining everything in the most stricter way to let people know. It's not just that I understand, I talk to you, you don't understand, and it's your problem. It's not like that. It's like I talk to you. If you don't understand, then it's my problem. I need to improve, and I need to try. I need to keep trying to let you understand. I don't want to easily give up on anyone that cannot understand the values, and I'll really keep on improving myself on how to explain the things.
Next question goes to Mr. Andrew James.
Thank you, Chairperson. Since you have been working with Francis in your EB team for the past 8 months, could you tell us the traits of each EB team that you look up to and would demonstrate in the next one?
Time's up, candidate. Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So for Frances, it's like she's willing to make changes when she sees the necessary and see the necessity. And for Kathy, it's like I like the way how she pay attention or care about every single detail. And for Naomi, it's like I like how she is willing to take opinions from others. And for Gary, it's I like how he described things. He's trying his best to let others know like what I've just mentioned. And for Rhiannon, it's like I like how detail-minded she is, and how well is she looking into the details. And for Irene, for Irene, I really like how she can really, like same as Gary, how well she can explain the things. Sometimes maybe she'll understand what I really mean, and then she helped me explain, and I really appreciate that.
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So for Gary, it's going to be resilience, because to be honest, it's not easy to be in his position right now, but that never really stopped him from continuing to do what he's doing. And for Naomi, it's I can see that she really cares, not just to the EB but to her members. And for me, that's some quality that I want to have still ongoing next year. And for Rhiannon, it's that she is always constantly wanting to know more about what's going on in other departments, which can be seen by how she would ask us questions during like EB meetings. And for Frances, it's about quality management, and how does she ensure that things are going up to standard. And for Kathy, it's I would say it's her care towards the development, because it's not just because she's in TM, but she is able to show her care towards like other people about how exactly are they doing. And for Angie, it's about her care towards the entity, which I can see very clearly as well.
Any follow-up question? Waived. Next question goes to Ms. Muskan Gandhi.
Thank you, Chairperson. What is the MCP next election this year, and how does your plan contribute to it?
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So actually, Justin's plan stress a lot on innovation. He wants every single member in every level to innovate in different ways. It's not just in a conventional way of doing innovation. It's like he wants every member to be empowered to think of more than what they are doing. And which part of my plan is echoing to that is I'm going to open more space for members to debate or to talk about some topics or give opinion on some operations, at the same time to let them know more about what is really happening in the entity. And I think that's a way that we can have more perspective on how to do things. And it kind of echoes with Justin's plan.
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So I actually met Justin a few days ago, and one thing that we can actually agree upon is about building a data-driven organization. So he has showed me some of the things that he has created that he wished to implement for next year, such as there's this software where you can actually see which strategy actually allow a LC to generate more leads and the conversion between each stages. And it's actually a very comprehensive data and comprehensive software that we can actually implement back to the LC. That's why in my manifesto I talked about building a data-driven organization as well, because that's something that I believe that not just AIESEC CityU needs, but AIESEC in Hong Kong needs. And seeing that there's an actual action plan for that, that's something that I can relate back to the MCP's plan. Follow-up question, Ms. Muskan Gandhi.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm assuming you both are aware of AIESEC in Hong Kong and the EXPA thingy, but one of our AIESEC values is demonstrating integrity. So how would you, please comment on that, are we still demonstrating integrity while doing that?
Times of candidate. Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I know this was discussed back in one of our LT meetings. The objective of hacking EXPA is for performance, and that is something that's why it was initiated in the beginning. And I do understand that for some people, this is going against the value of demonstrating integrity. However, from how I see it, we're not actually harming anyone in any bad way. It's just that we're trying to accelerate our performance. And I would say that it's not demonstrating integrity, more like we're trying to play smart in this technological era, and how we can actually maximize everything that we get or have to be better, a better organization. Because sometimes it doesn't help us for staying conventional and traditional, because there's so many things we can do with modern technology.
At time 4:05, Chairperson receives General Motion number 5, which is that the warmest welcome be given to Ms. Daphne Toll, Local Committee President of AIESEC in HKBU of Session 1718, as well as Ms. Angie Ma, Local Committee Vice President of Outgoing Global Volunteer of AIESEC in HKBU of Session 1718. Can I have the proposal from the floor? Ms. Naomi Wong, seconder. Mr. Gary Christopher will propose and speak for the motion proposer.
Hello, Angie and Steffi. Thank you for coming to Irene's and Angie's EGM. Although the last question list is drafted, but feel free to listen to their answers towards different questions, as well as to pay attention to their closing speech, and hope you enjoy the rest of the EGM. Thank you.
Seconder.
Thank you, Chairperson. So welcome Steffi and Angie, our closest neighbor. As what Naomi has mentioned, that the questions have been drafted, so we hope that you guys will enjoy the rest of the EGM, enjoy the closing speeches, and that might inspire one of you to become an LCP for the next time as well.
Any general comment? If no, Chairperson assumes that motion passed with acclamation. Okay, and we'll first go back to Angie's answer.
Okay, so in my definition, I do think it's not demonstrating integrity. This is not the only way that you can do, and if you're not doing, it will not cause great harm. Like, you're not dying because you're not doing, and why would you need to do? And if you really need to get the CVs to promote to the TN takers, then there is always better ways. Like you can form IR with the partners, and then they can give you the CVs. It's not like you're getting CVs without asking. And I don't think that's a necessary way to improve your IGT performance. And I think it's better to get the permission first before getting the CVs.
Follow-up question. Follow-up question? Oh, sorry. And next question goes to Ms. Derry Suroto.
Thank you, Chairperson. So my first question is addressed to Irene. Okay, wait. Actually, it's a follow-up question for Muskan's follow-up question. I am currently the manager of IGT, and although I do believe that the CV digging software is necessary for accelerating our results and so on and so forth. However, I don't understand your point of view when you say you don't think it is not demonstrating integrity when we are committing an illegal act. Can you please re-explain your views? Thank you.
Point of clarification from Ms. Angie Fong.
Do I need to answer?
No.
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So from how I see it, it's okay. First, yeah, hacking expert is not completely legal. That's true. But from how I see it, if you use that method to, let's say, dig up a CV that's not supposed to be digged out, and then to use it, then I would see it as something wrong. But if you use this method to be able to dig out a CV of someone who can actually, at the end of the day, be matched to one of your opportunity and it's gonna be life-changing, then for what I see, okay, it's like if it's opening up a door and no serious harm is committed, then I do not see that as a huge problem. The word integrity is very vague from my own perspective because there's many things that a person see it as something going against integrity, but another person might not feel the same way. So for me, one bottom line is, if it really does harm someone, then it would be against integrity. Time's up. Follow-up question. Ms. Derry Suroto.
Thank you, Chairperson. So my follow-up question is addressed for Ms. Angie Fong. So as an entity, we sent more than hundreds of EPs this last year abroad in terms of both volunteering and internship. So as you know, we are a youth developing platform who develops leadership, right? So in terms of the external perspective, they only see the outgoing exchange part from us, mostly. Because we don't control the incoming side of the exchange, and I have been involved in both the outgoing and incoming side, I believe that in terms of the EP's growth, the incoming side is a lot more important. But how can you ensure that the EPs that we send is receiving the experience that is deserved to develop leadership when we are not controlling the incoming side? Thank you.
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So for this question, I think a lot of you guys would have the answer of doing IR, do good partnership, and you will get good projects, and then the EP will learn a lot because the entity is good. But I think the most critical point doesn't lie on the hosting entity. It actually lies on the EP, himself or herself. Like if they are someone who are having awareness to the surroundings, or they are someone that are proactive to learn, even if the entity is not good, they can learn a lot. there's a lot of story in AIESEC in this way that how people can learn in the projects. So I really think what we should do is to maximize the EP's quality on how proactive they are and how well their awareness is to the surroundings in order to let them learn the maximum throughout their journey.
So due to time constraint, follow-up question would, starting from now on, not be entertained. So the next question will go to Kathy, Ms. Kathy Kwan.
Thank you, Chairperson. So my question is that, what do you think the P and the VP of each department individually should care most about? Yeah, like a person care most about what?
Part of clarification from Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So, respective VP for each function, what should they care most about? Time's up, candidate. Ms. Angie Fong.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. So for the President, I think the most important thing is to really to know whether we are walking towards the direction that we have set and we have envisioned. And for OGV, it's of course about the product development. And it doesn't only mean the quantity that we have, but also the quality we have. Whether we are really developing the industry exchanges. And if we're not, what should we do to make it a thing that is valid? And it's the same for OGT, but in the perspective of global talent. And for IGT, I think it's also the same. It's just in different ways how O side is doing development and I side is doing development. But the thing they care should be the same. And for BM and ER, it's about how they can ensure the market penetration, can ensure entities' growth in long term. It's not just about how many leads we have in this booth. It's also about how can we...
Time's up. Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So first for GV, it's, I would say, value delivery because to be honest, GV projects is only 6 to 8 weeks. And it's very important that with good value delivery, the EP can actually grow. For GT and both IGT and OGT, it's very important for them to be aware of the career industry trends because whether you're doing the I side or O side, you have to know what kind of opportunities will bring benefit to the career plans of the EPs. And for BM, it's about how they can integrate the students into our organization. For TM, it's the development of all the team leaders, of all the members. And for FLA and IM, it's about the sustainability of the organization. For ER, it's about our external credibility towards the campus in particular. And for the President, it's about how you can actually put out a firm vision to put everyone together into one goal. Next question goes to Ms. Mint Waisalayu.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can you please pick one LC that is doing well or better or even the best, and how can you utilize their strength to develop our LC in the next session?
Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I think the LC that we can learn the most from, or I think is performing well, is CUHK because they really have high standards on their operation. They are ambitious on doing good things. They are ambitious on having improvement. And I think it kind of echoes with me that I really think we need to uphold high standards in order for the entity to grow. So yeah, CUHK.
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So I picked the same LC, which is CUHK. But more is besides the fact that they're very driven and they're willing to strive for excellence, another thing that I find admirable is how respective functional area is actually running towards the same direction.
and that's what I can see in their team, and that's something that I think we can learn a lot from, because just having a drive is not enough, but it's about how you can combine everyone's determination and drive towards the same thing, and that's something I can see that they're doing, and that has showed how they have grown in terms of their performance as well. Next question goes to Mr. Chris Chow.
Thank you, Chairperson. May I request for removal of second word?
Chairperson allows.
So in this question, it will be kind of thing that you can cooperate. So please deliver a 3-minute section to tell our members.
Excuse me, 3 minutes is too long.
Okay, 2 minutes. And we'll be together. So 2 minutes of something like that to persuade our members to become next year. We can deliver it together.
Okay, 2 minutes will now begin.
Okay, so we want to invite someone to help us. What is scary?
Please come up.
So how many of you guys have watched the video in our LC page? The one that is posted by Orenda? Raise your hand. Okay. We have a personal favorite part of that video, which really shows how much fun it is to actually apply for VP and be part of the EB. So we would like to we have the honor to welcome Gary up on stage to show us what was the fun part that we really liked that we know, you know. Can you please show them how much fun it is to be part of an EB where you can dance and sing and No, it's okay. You can dance. There was no music in the video, right?
What if I decline?
Come on, where's the EB spirit? Okay, Chris, come out. Come on. Be role models. Yeah, run. Can you please dance with Gary at the roll call to show how much fun it is to be part of the LT?
Can you teach us?
I'll teach. I'm wearing heels, but okay, no excuse, right? Can we do Gary's favorite?
Oh, yeah.
That you
Gary, have to stop.
Thank you, yeah, we have 38 seconds, 37 now.
Or maybe we can effectively sing for us.
I forgot. Can we have the melody? I forgot.
Oh, don't hurt people's feelings. Alright, done? No? It's okay, Gary, you lead. No? Then we lead lah. 1, 2, you know his favorite part, right?
Just the rhythm.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Come on, Gary, it's your favorite part.
Yeah, very good guys. Very good guys.
Anyways, we have 8 minutes, right?
Okay. If you see this kind of people, you have the motivation to change him. So that's the reason, one of the reasons that you
Time's up, candidate. Please go back to your seat and standing order will resume. Next question goes to Mr. Calvin Wong. Mr. Calvin Wong.
Thank you, Chairperson. My question is that do you think the present or the modern AIESEC way is too rigid in general, especially for the new members? Thank you.
Point of clarification from Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. So you're talking about the AIESEC way. Is it too rigid for the current modern world? Is it?
No, for the members.
Oh, for members.
Time's up, candidate. Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. So I think it's more on how we deliver it. To be honest, I feel like the leadership team do not really talk a lot about the AIESEC way to our members. That's why for people who just saw the AIESEC way for the first time, or even you guys who's been here for several months already, it feels like it's something really fluffy, really like unreachable. But I guess it's about how, as an LT, we should be able to show the relevance of the AIESEC way to our current world, which, to be honest, I think we do not do very good this year. And that's why I emphasize a lot about going towards the big picture, because there's no such thing as the AIESEC way being too rigid, only on how we can make it less rigid.
Ms. Angie Fong.
I think it's not rigid in the nature, it's really just about the way of delivery and how you really perceive it as what is your perception towards leadership. Because for AIESEC, the leadership is actually very broad, the definition is actually very broad, and you can, it's not like if you're not the kind of leader that is solution-oriented, then you are not a leader. Or it's not like, say, you cannot stop a war from happening, then you are not upholding peace. So actually everyone can fit into the AIESEC values, and AIESEC values is for everyone. So I don't think it's rigid at all.
Okay, next question goes to Ms. Kelly Wong.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can you please give 3 reasons why the quorum should go against to you as a president? Thank you.
Time's up, candidate. Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. The first reason goes back to the fact that I am driven by my personal relevance towards what AIESEC is trying to achieve. I see the importance of having cultural understanding, and that's what I see lacking in RLC. And then also the fact that I'm ready to lead the entity by being an example. So I can see the reason why our entity, especially this session, we have a lot of people doubting the relevance of AIESEC is because we have yet to show them what it actually means to achieve.
Kind of clarification from Ms. Kelly Wong. Ms. Kelly Wong.
Thank you, Chairperson. I mean, vote against to you. Yes.
Time's up, candidate. Ms. Angie Fong.
So thank you, Chairperson. First reason is I think I'm not fun enough so that you guys are not really able to pay attention to what we talk about, and that's the first reason. And the second reason is that I failed to make Gary dance roll call, and the third reason is that I cannot tell any reason that you should vote against me.
Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. For the first reason, which is pretty ironic, is I feel like you might vote against me if you think that I am unable to really understand the local culture, because most of our customers, most of our members are locals. Perhaps that I myself has yet to fully understand how I can develop you. Second, it's me being overly optimistic, I would say. It could be bad, it could be good, because by being overly optimistic, it could also imply that I might overlook several details that could lead to big problems. Last but not the least, you will vote against me if you do believe that Angie will be a better leader.
Okay, and the last question will go to Mr. Kendrick Intan. Mr. Kendrick Intan.
Thank you, Chairperson. Can I ask follow-up question after my question?
Chairperson allows.
Okay, so the first question is, if I tell you AIESEC will get this ban by the end of 2018, what will you do as president in the remaining 1 year?
Point of clarification from Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. So you assume that it'll disband by the end of this year, which is 2018.
Yes.
So what will I do as the...
As president.
Time's up, candidate. Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So if AIESEC Institute is gonna be disbanded by this year, like by this year, I think the focus that I'm gonna put into is on how I can make every one of the members really be an AIESECer and act out AIESEC value out of AIESEC, and also to put importance on how exchange can benefit the humankind. It's not always that you can only be an AIESEC to make AIESEC an impactful organization. Even if AIESEC is not there, the people who are doing things that AIESEC envision and really actually contributing to peace and fulfillment of humankind's potential, I think that's also a valid way of how AIESEC can last.
Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, assuming that there's still a chance to salvage the LC, of course, is to get to the bottom of why it's going to be disbanded. However, if taking into a perspective that it will be disbanded, then one thing is there's actually a lot of ways that as AIESECers we can still continue living to the values that we uphold. So perhaps like most of you guys are year 1 students, and to ensure that you guys who will stay in this university for the upcoming few more years, is how that you can still uphold or remember AIESEC as that organization that put value in your life, so that when AIESEC returns, you guys are ready to make this LC even better, instead of just letting go of this LC by thinking that it has no hope. Because at the end of the day, like I said, the uniqueness of this organization is on the people. And that's why we have to place our faith in the people as well.
A follow-up question, Mr. Kendrick Intan.
Okay, can I ask 2 questions since I'm the final question raiser?
Would you please request for a removal of standing order?
Can I request for removal of standing order?
Chairperson allows.
So I have 2 questions. So without using any words that is being used in general to define AIESEC, which is AIESEC is a non-political blah blah blah. Can you define AIESEC internally in terms of what it means to you? And the second question is, if I tell you that all your plans won't work, won't fix the entity, and the problem lies within the organizational design and also its business model. So can you tell me one industry that has similarities in terms of AIESEC, in terms of how AIESEC is operated and how it runs, and what can you learn from that industry?
Point of clarification from Ms. Irene.
Thank you, Chairperson. For the industry part, do I have to name a specific company?
No, you just spell the industry, for example, like metal or something like that.
Oh, okay.
Time's up, candidate.
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. How I would describe AIESEC is you guys have to admit that life will not be smooth sailing. There are times that a storm will come, or even worse, pirates will invade your ship when you're sailing. But if you're ready to face these challenges, or if you're ready to face the worst parts of yourself, then AIESEC is a place for you to face these challenges and make sure that you're ready when you actually get out into the real world. And regarding the fact that the problem of AIESEC or the bottleneck of AIESEC might not actually be on us, or maybe it's really on the business model of AIESEC, it's about how we can relate this business to the students of the university. Because at the end of the day, it's about how we can leverage the trends of the world back into how we can actually put impact on people. Point of clarification from Mr. Kendrick Intam.
Just asking an industry, you don't have to explain why.
Ms. Irene. Thank you, Chairperson. For the industry, I would actually have the e-commerce industry. Namely, let's say I would put Alibaba as the specific company, mainly because they are able to leverage on what is needed in the current world, which is bringing convenience to others and using technology to actually make people's life easier. And for me, that is something that we can learn from, because one of the bottlenecks of AIESEC is always on how we can relate back to the real world and about how we can use data, which is strongly talked about nowadays, how we use data to actually leverage on what the customer needs. So how we can also conduct customer analysis, how we conduct competitor analysis to actually make this organization strive, like how Alibaba have overturned Amazon and eBay in China due to their power of data and due to their understanding on the local market. Ms. Angie Fong.
Thank you, Chairperson. So if I need to describe AIESEC in a new way, I would say AIESEC is a bus stop that lets you go to the top of the hill and see what's down there, and then go back to the way you usually live, because it is an experience that is challenging. Like you need to walk up to the hill and then go to that bus stop to look for a whole view under the hill, and that's what AIESEC is supposed to gonna let the people see. And the last part is that you need to go back to the place you usually live to really act out the AIESEC values, to let what you have seen in AIESEC to be applicable in your life. And for the second question, I would think the transportation industry is the industry that I would recommend AIESECers to learn from, because from the history of this industry, you can tell we originally traveled by the animals, and then we travel by wheels, and then we travel on the ocean, and we now travel in the air. So it's an example of how this industry is demonstrating striving for excellence, and also by having new kind of business models like what Uber is doing to provide customers with more values on how convenient the experience or the service can be. I think that's a way that AIESEC can learn from too.
Okay, so this will mark the end of the Q&A session, and at time 4:37, Chairperson receives procedural motion number 13, which reads that third round of question and answer session for local committee president candidate session 2018 and 19 to be concluded. Can I have the proposal from the floor? Ms. Naomi Wang, seconder. Ms. Kathy Kwan, proposal sweep for motion. Waive. Seconder. Waive. Any general comment? If no, motion put to vote. Any abstain against? If no, Chairperson assumes that motion passed unanimously. And at time 4:37, Chairperson receives general motion number 6, which is that the warmest welcome be given to Mr. Tong Li Lu, the local committee president of AIESEC in Taiwan and TPU of year 2017. and Mr. Nin Ho Nam, the Member Committee Vice President of B2C and Outgoing Global Entrepreneur and Talent of AIESEC in Hong Kong of session 17-18 to be here. Can I have the proposal from the floor? Ms. Naomi Wong, seconder. Mr. Gary Christopher, will propose to speak for motion proposal.
Hello, Hannah. Hello, Tony. Thank you for coming to the EGM. So thank you for your support. Although all question rounds have been over, but also feel free to enjoy their closing speech. And also, if possible, so raise comments in later session to give more comments on to helping them to grow after their election day. Thank you.
Will seconder speak for the motion? Seconder.
Thank you, Chairperson. So welcome, Hong and Naomi. So as what Naomi has mentioned earlier, that the question and answer session has been wrapped up. So please just enjoy the rest of the EGM, enjoy the closing speech, and enjoy the voting process as well. I mean, not the general comment session later. Thank you.
Any general comment? Mr. Min Ho Lam.
Thank you, Chairperson. So it's really great to come here to see all of you. And then I want to tell both your candidates, it is a very treasurable moment that we see everybody in this room. Only both of you are taking this chance to challenge yourself and then making yourself a better LCP in the future. So I hope more people in this room can try to take up leadership roles and experience what they have developed in this day. Yeah, thank you.
Any more general comment? Mr. Tony Lu.
Thank you, Chairperson, and hello everyone. My name is Tony. I come from Taiwan because I finished my exchange journey in Tanzania, so just transferred to Hong Kong. So that Hong Kong took me to here to enjoy your election meeting. So first of all, I want to appreciate the candidate who stepped out forward. And also this really good journey that you can never imagine, and even you will never know what happened in your future journey, but it's really worth it. And for all the delegates here, I really appreciate and really feel the atmosphere of this election, and hopefully after finish this election, you can feel me to we can keep each other, and also really look forward for AIESEC and CityU. You will bring a billion generation next generation. Thank you.
Any more general comment? If no, chairperson assumes that motion passed with acclamation. Okay, important notice, since we have been consecutively going through 2 rounds of Q&A, so right now you will have a 5-minute toilet break. Later on, after you